argument that they want to use, we should be able to take. So absolutely, but I'm more focused on like how do we create economic incentives in the network itself without having to rely on advertising.
Yeah, it's just that the money has to come off of the crypto so-called coins, the hash strings, have to come off and get translated into real products and services. So the more sort of off-ramps there are to real products and services, even at the institutional level, although I mean there are certainly many small advertisers on Twitter, it seems like accepting Bitcoin, maybe some other cryptos for advertising payments on Twitter would be supportive of Bitcoin.
100%, and also looking at just general commerce through Twitter itself.
Sorry, what, Elon?
I was asking Jack if he's going to do it.
Oh. Can we get a product announcement today? Elon, how about you? You obviously you're a big personality on Twitter. What are your thoughts on your role and your company's role in Bitcoin and sort of preserving the ethos?
Yeah, I mean, I generally think we should do things that benefit the people as a whole and increase the probability that the future is good. So, I think to me it just seems self-evident that we should kind of take these set of actions most likely to make the future good. And I think probably crypto or some of the cryptocurrencies will make the future better, most likely. It's not, I always think of these things in terms of probabilities, but I think it's probably better for there to be a prosperous Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin, maybe some others in the future. And I think it can have an empowering effect for individuals and increase the power of the individual relative to government. It really, if you think of government is just a corporation in the limit. So sometimes some people are like against corporations but for government. It's like, guys, government is just a corporation in the limit. It's the biggest corporation of all, and it's got a monopoly on violence. So if you don't like corporations, you should really hate government.
There you go. All right. We got about, we'll try to wrap up in 10 minutes. So let's move on to future of Bitcoin. So Tesla and Square have both put Bitcoin on the balance sheet. Kathy, I'm curious to hear from you. What advice would you have for other institutions looking to put Bitcoin on their balance sheet?
Well, I guess the first piece of advice is, just make sure, and I actually learned this after both Square and Tesla put Bitcoin on their balance sheet. The Bitcoin is being treated as an intangible asset. So we need to get FASB to reconsider this, because with an intangible asset, if the asset goes up in price, it can't be marked up on their books. But if it goes down, it must be marked down. So, there's some asymmetry there, which is, we need to change that given what we believe Bitcoin is. And I do believe if, I'll harken back to something, well, it was either Elon or Jack said, think about it, you take away the boundaries, the different currencies, just think about how explosive growth could be and how wide reaching taking the friction out of the system could be. So I would encourage corporations to think about that this ability to do business anywhere in the world, ultimately, obviously, we're paving the way here. That's certainly a consideration. It also will serve as a hedge against inflation, especially, and as I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of emerging markets that are suffering from significant inflation. In other words, the purchasing power of those populations is going down. So they are going to migrate to Bitcoin and other ways to preserve purchasing power. And again, being able to sell to them in that kind of currency would be very useful. I'd also suggest, once again, this idea of deflation, I think, is going to be a real thing. There's going to be good deflation caused by innovation, so demand will boom because of that. There's going to be bad deflation because so many companies out there have not been investing enough in innovation. Their products are going to go obsolete, as you know, and they're going to be stuck trying to service the debt that they piled on because their shareholders wanted profits and wanted them now. So they leveraged up to buy back their shares and pay dividends, and so I think that's going to be the source of bad deflation and counterparty risk. And we learned from 0809 that counterparty risk can be devastating, almost cataclysmic. So a hedge against that as well, I think, would be another reason to do it.
Great. Yeah, it's funny. It kind of like Tesla's bank balances in Europe have negative interest rates. It drives me crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, technically, if you've got like 2% inflation on 1% interest, you're technically minus 1% return. But nonetheless, it is quite annoying to just see your bank balance drop in real time in Europe. Europe has negative interest rates. This is insane.
Yeah. Paying the banks, paying the banks to hold
the bank to keep your money. I'm like, what?
It is crazy.
Like, what? We definitely move that into Bitcoin.
I believe Ray Dalio said, "Buy Bitcoin and not bonds." So there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Jack, you've talked about design being an underfunded area in Bitcoin, and Elon earlier mentioned, usability could improve a lot. I don't think anyone's going to argue with that. What do you see as the future of how can design impact Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Bitcoin network is beautifully designed as a protocol in the way it works. I mean, it went after a single problem, and it does in an absolutely astounding way. But I think the endpoints of people getting into it is still a little bit confusing. So I think the more energy we spend on wallets and making sure that the wallets are simple and accessible and they're non-custodial as well. Yeah. I think the best example of this that I know of is probably this wallet called Moon, and it's just simple, straightforward. It's a great. It does an amazing thing with key management that my mom and friends new to Bitcoin can understand. Does amazing in storage, and it also has a very clever implementation of Lightning, so that you can use it in a transactional way without having to think about it. Just with QR codes in a way that makes sense. So more work like that, I think, really brings us forward.
Great. Let's wrap things up with a final question for each of you. I guess what is your hope for Bitcoin? How it can impact the world? Let's see, Elon, do you want to start with that? So what's your hope? What's your hope for Bitcoin?
Well, my hope for I guess crypto in general is that it can improve the efficiency of the information system that we call money. So if the core efficiency of money is improved and and money has less error, where, like I said, error is like any kind of government interference or fraud or anything like that, this will naturally lead to basically a better standard of living and more power to the individual, which I very much agree with.
Great. Kathy?
Yeah, and I would segue from what Elon just said is, money has powerful network effect qualities. And so, we talked about ESG earlier. I think that, of course, that aspiration, having, this money be the best from an ESG point of view. That's really talking about solving some of the world's problems right now, which we definitely want to do. But I also am very excited about this idea of network effect and the convergence of blockchain technology and artificial intelligence from a technology point of view. I think, think about the internet in the earliest days. We couldn't imagine what was going to happen, but the impetus to growth was pretty incredible. So I am looking at this rules-based monetary policy, making for better lives around the world, as we've just said. But I'm also looking at the technology itself and the convergence between blockchain technology and artificial intelligence, to change the world in ways that we cannot imagine right now, solving even more problems, but creating more opportunities as well, which is the history of technology and disruptive innovation.
Jack, what's your hope for Bitcoin?
My hope is that it creates world peace, or helps create world peace. I mean, Elon said it earlier, we have all these monopolies of violence, and the individual doesn't have power. And the amount of cost and distraction that comes from our monetary system today is real, and it takes away attention from the bigger problems. Some of the bigger problems that Elon is trying to solve, like get us to a multi-planetary humanity. All these distractions that we have to deal with on a daily basis take away from those bigger goals that affect every single person on this planet, increasingly so. So it may sound a little bit ridiculous, but you fix that foundational level and everything above it improves in such a dramatic way. So it's going to be long term, but my hope is definitely peace.
That's fantastic. Well, I'd like to thank all three of you for giving us your time today. It's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you to the audience for tuning in. The B word is not just this discussion, but we have a lineup of incredible speakers and content. So I encourage everyone to check it out. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Welcome everybody to the B word. I'm Steve Lee, the lead of Square Crypto, and I'm here today to moderate a discussion about Bitcoin that will span from what makes it special to its relationship with energy, the community ethos, and the future of Bitcoin. I'm joined by three special guests. The first is Cathie Wood, founder, CEO, and CIO of ARK Invest. Next is Elon Musk, techno king of Tesla and chief engineer of SpaceX. And finally, Jack Dorsey, CEO of Square and CEO of Twitter. So we have a lot to talk about today. So let's get to the talk and get right to it. I'm going to start off by asking each of you a question, which is, what's shaped and influenced your views on Bitcoin? And let's start with Cathie.
Okay, Steve, thank you. Well, the first thing was our focus on disruptive innovation. So starting in 2011, Brett Winton, our director of research, who I know will be on the program later, he started talking about this thing called Bitcoin at the time. And it was a curiosity as we were doing our brainstorms in research. But as we learned more about this open source ecosystem, that might fulfill the role of the payment system that the internet neglected to build into the system, not expecting commerce. We thought, this might be something. And then I became even more interested when I realized that my economics would come into play as well here. And Art Laffer, my mentor from USC, and a monetary scholar, in 2014, I asked him if he would collaborate on a paper on Bitcoin. And he was a bit of a naysayer at first, but agreed to read the paper. He read the paper, tore it up, and from an economics point of view, really wanted to understand this. And he said, I think you got something here. This is a rules-based monetary system. I've been waiting for this for my entire career. So the combination of disruptive innovation generally, economics on top of that, and the huge misunderstanding out there as to what this is, that was intriguing and launched our research effort.
Thank you. Elon, what's influenced your views on Bitcoin?
Well, I've thought about money for quite a while, obviously since the PayPal days. The and then the companies that preceded that, X.com, which I created, and Confinity, which Peter Thiel, Max Levchin, Luke Howry, and others created. When we combined the companies and made PayPal. So I've been thinking about money for a long time. And really, I think it's best to think of money as an information system, primarily an information system for labor allocation. And for practical purposes, it exists in a series of heterogeneous databases, like very different databases in bank mainframes around the world. It moves quite slowly in reality. It may seem to move fast sometimes, and it does with PayPal, which is real time. But the vast majority of the systems out there are batch processing. So the actual reconciliation may take 1 to 5 business days, sometimes longer. And you have the ACH system, which is ancient and still in operation, which is allows transfers effectively like a check would be an ACH transfer, but it's not secure. And you've got the credit card systems, which are also not secure. It would be like handing your username and password to a stranger in a restaurant if you buy a meal. So there's definitely an opportunity for something that is better from an information theory standpoint. So and there you can think of it like data on a network. I think is the way to view it. What has the most throughput? What has the least error? What drops the fewest packets? Fraud, for example, being a source of error, and government interference in currencies being a source of error. But it's fundamentally an information system. So I think it makes sense to support something that improves the quality of information with which we conduct the economy. And Bitcoin is a candidate for that. It does, I think, some things well, and it's obviously it's evolving, and there are additional things like Lightning being done on top of Bitcoin. But Bitcoin per se is mostly solving for scarcity, or rather solving for essentially having no throat to choke, decentralized. So there's no one who can be coerced in any way to empty their Bitcoin account. Well, I guess they could technically, but on an individual basis, but the system as a whole cannot. And it has an open ledger, which is also quite good. But transaction volume is low. Transaction cost is high, and usability for the average person is not yet very good. But it has a lot of potential. And I should say that, like, I'm not, and I apologize for taking a long time, but there certainly is a lot to say. In general, I'm a supporter of Bitcoin and the idea of cryptocurrency in general. But as I've said publicly, we do need to watch out for crypto taking, especially Bitcoin, using proof of work to maybe use energy that's maybe a bit too much and not necessarily good for the environment. So, but on balance, I support Bitcoin, and I'm not an investor. The only publicly traded stock I own is Tesla, and the only significant thing I own outside of Tesla is my SpaceX stock that could help create both companies. So, but apart from that, I do own Bitcoin, and Tesla owns Bitcoin, SpaceX owns Bitcoin, and I do personally own a bit of Ethereum and Dogecoin, of course. So.
Okay, great, thank you. And we'll get into some of those issues in more depth as well. Jack, how about you? What shaped your views of Bitcoin?
The network and the community. It's deeply principled. It's weird as hell. It's always evolving, and it just reminded me of the internet when I was a kid. And I encountered alt cypherpunks when I was fairly young, and this was a topic of discussion for years. I didn't touch it until 2008 when we started Square. Elon and teams at X and PayPal inspired a lot of what we were trying to do, trying to bring in more to a physical world. But we encountered this crazy predatory system that was slow, that was obtuse, and I think one of the things that we tried to do, which X and PayPal also tried to do, is build an abstraction layer around this complication and around this predatory nature that the financial industry can tend to be, and make it work for people. But when I saw Bitcoin in 2009, you see a chance to replace the whole foundation. And everything that Elon was talking about in terms of ACH and the credit card networks were built with very different agendas in a very different time frame. And it's crazy that they still exist, and they have scaled, but they just are not relevant to today, and they're certainly not relevant to the future, especially when you consider the entire world and countries like Nigeria or Ghana or India, and its interconnection with countries like the United States and Canada and all over Europe. So what really drove my thinking and drives my passion around it is, like, if the internet gets a chance to get a native currency, what will that be? And to me, it's Bitcoin, because of those principles, because of that creation story, because of its resilience, because of the number of tests it's been. But what inspires me the most is just the community driving it. It just reminds me of the early internet. It's the only reason that I have a career, because I learned so much from people like who are building Bitcoin today, and I continue to learn in that sense, and I'm so grateful for it.
That's a good segue into the next question I'd like to ask you, Jack. Is you said before that Bitcoin changes everything. Can you speak more to that?
Well, I just think that a lot of what we experience in life, when you really get down to the foundation, a lot of our monetary policies, a lot of our monetary systems cause so much distraction and so much cost. And when you get to a system where you have the potential for people to truly own it, they can verify it themselves. You don't have to have trust going in. You don't have to trust it at all. You can verify it through source code or whatever your appetite is, and that any particular person can help drive the future of it. And at the same time, it's not controlled by any state. It's not controlled by any bank. It's not controlled by any corporation. And these three parties of people who participate in the network, people who mine, and also the developers, constantly debating the correct roadmap and the way forward, is a beautiful thing. And I don't know of many other consensus-based models that have existed at that scale for this long with this amount of success. And we're still fairly early. So when, I met a woman in Ethiopia 2 years ago, and she was trying to create the lift for Ethiopia. Elon, I think I reached out to you at that time as well, because she really wanted some Teslas. She still has to take paper fiat cash from her passengers and pay all of her drivers in the same way, because there's no monetary system that she can utilize. There's nothing digital. And Africa as a continent is hugely interconnected from a monetary standpoint, but also hugely taxed in that same way. So a lot of the potential that I see, the internet having a native currency, helps her build her business in a much faster way. And also, if you consider something like Bitcoin existing before YouTube, before Twitter, before Facebook, a lot of the business models that we have today would not be the same. We would certainly not have the dependency we have upon the advertising business model if Bitcoin existed pre-Twitter. And I think the amount of business models that it enables, the amount of innovation it enables going forward, especially when you can consider the whole internet instead of going country by country by country by country, which you have to whenever you're dealing with finance, it really just opens the aperture. And that is what I want to see in my lifetime, is a currency that is standard and sound for the internet that everyone can use.
Great. a hallmark of Bitcoin is its fixed supply of 21 million coins. Elon referenced that earlier. It may be the first system that humans have created that humans cannot later change. Kathy, I'm curious, with your background in monetary history and macroeconomics, what are your thoughts on that type of system?
Oh, well, I'll recount the story